panel the next session. I'd like to thank you for the same, and I'd also like to introduce the next list panelists who will be joining you. Our panel discussion is on boosting air cargo to give wings to Make in India, and I'd like to invite on stage Dr. Renu Singh Parmar, Economic Advisor, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Government of India. Let us put our hands together as I welcome her on stage. We also have with us Mr. K.S. Kumar, Director General, Air Cargo Forum India. Warm welcome to you, sir. Let's put our hands together as I invite Mr. Mahesh Trikha, MD, August Global Logistics. Thank you for joining us. We also have with us Mr. Pradeep Panikkar, Chief Commercial Officer, Delhi International Airport. Let's put our hands together. After the panel discussion, we'd like to have an open house in case any of you would like to ask any questions or... Sir, all yours.
Panikkar, I'll start with you. Well, good afternoon once again. We have a very strong and a very knowledgeable panel here. I'll shoot my first question straight to Mr. Panikkar. I mentioned about air freight stations to you. Air freight stations, as I mentioned, are akin to an inland container depot or a container freight station, and the basic purpose of this is to decongest the airport. I'd like to know from Mr. Panikkar, what does he feel about these air freight stations, how many are required, and what can be done to facilitate this?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Dadu, for the question. The very premise of working on an air freight station strategy being worked out currently for decongestion of airport may not actually work well, for the simple reason that, as you did mention in your presentation, currently airports have capacity, and perhaps there is not a need for a decongestion of the airports per se. But yes, what would be important to notice is that the air freight station is actually taking the airport Can you hear me? Hello? I think I just hold it in my hand. Anyway, maybe I'll look down when I start speaking. Yeah, what I was telling you is the air freight stations per se currently being worked out as a decongestion factor for the airports. But as Mr. Dadu mentioned in his presentation, airports today have capacity, and there is not therefore a need to decongest the airport per se, leading to the development of AFS. AFS, the way we look at it, is basically taking the airport to where the production center is. So you actually are taking the airport to the doorstep of the producer, and that perhaps is a facility which they will be able to utilize better. For them, why do shippers need an air freight station vis-a-vis perhaps say airport at Delhi or Bombay? They would prefer if the product which goes through the AFS can be cleared at their doorstep, and then they are able to get their duty drawback and all that faster. So if there is a speed, then that's how it is going to function better. In fact, on a note, we have actually worked, I mean, although we won't call it an air freight station, we have taken on 2 initiatives where we have bonded trucking running from Ludhiana and Kanpur, and we have actually been seeing some of the users actually go into those facilities to avail of the fact that they are able to get their duty drawbacks faster, and they get much more flexibility to operate. However, when there are large volumes of cargo which they want to send, they still come through Delhi, because one is that they then know that if they come in, there are so many options available, so many airlines available. So that gives them that flexibility. However, this entire concept of AFS station is something we are looking into the future, and as our airports, the kind of growth of cargo which Mr. Dadu mentioned is likely to happen, especially with Make in India going in a big way, there will be need perhaps for these outlets to come in. That's what I would like to answer.
Okay. Mr. Kanwar, as I mentioned, the e-commerce market is growing very rapidly. One of the requirements of the trade is that you allow e-commerce shipments through the courier mode. Another requirement is dutiable cargo which is being imported through the courier has security and revenue concerns. Can you dovetail both these issues and tell us what do you feel about them?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to mention here that the e-commerce definitely, as it was seen in your presentation, that there is a huge growth, and overall Indian air cargo is moving very fast, where it is in terms of value terms, we can say it is more than 35% to 40% of the entire the trade which is moving out of our country. But at the same time, if you see how these, not only the express industry, the IT development is definitely we can say the requirement at the moment for the entire air cargo industry, because we can see that it is not moving that fast as it is expected. Indian IT experts are all over the world, you can see, right from USA down the line, and they are developing. I can see even the Singapore cargo terminal, SATS cargo terminal. The IT has been developed by an IT. Similarly, you can see in Frankfurt also. I have seen the Frankfurt Airport Authority's cargo terminal, which is being developed by one of the Indian company. So the point is basically here, I would like to mention over here, that we have IT experts. There is huge amount of experts are there in our country who are developing excellent outside the world. But the point is here, we are not able to exploit the strength we have, and that's the reason though we have the implementation of electronic mode of communications and the processing, the customs have developed their own, that is called Indian EDI, EDI package. The cargo terminal operators, they have done their own systems, but still, the issue is the type of, the transparency, the type of the fastness of the processing, which the general, our trade, our members, they require, they expect, it is not coming forward. There is basically, still the documentation are still there. The hard copies are still being insisted by the government agencies, That's the reason why, because the documents are required, because it is the licenses, copy of licenses, copy of invoices. So many important documents are definitely required when you process the cargo to customs. But the point is how these documents can be eliminated. The government has already issued, IT Act has come during 2000, and I'm really surprised that the 2015 years we have taken, but still the documents had not been eradicated. Whereas it is clearly specified in the IT Act 2000 that if the messages, if the documents are being flown from one customer to the other, or the one regulatory agencies to the users, digitally signed, no documents are required, because those digitally signed documents are equally competent. They are in the court of law, means it is valid. But the issue is basically here, when you talk about the express industry, now the express industry has developed its own software, its own package, but still it is to match with the customs. Now there is a dialogue still going on. My friends in the audience, definitely from the express industry, may be able to tell more liberty that the stage, it has taken more than 2 to 3 years. That both are not marrying each other, and then express industry is really suffering for that. If the IT system is not developed, then how the e-commerce can develop? So my request would be to the authorities basically that they have to sort out those issues and develop the IT system in such a way with the documents should flow digitally signed, and then there is no requirement of any hard copies, which definitely a huge amount of documents are lying in the warehouses. Huge, the agencies have to file bulk of the documents to customs and all. So this can be done. This development has to come. Then only we can say whether we can talk about the developing a hub or developing the Indian car to a new heights. That only can come. But so far the other question was regarding the value terms. Definitely I have been told by my members, because the ACFI has a membership from the express industry, that the express cargo is growing very far, on a very, very high note, and even the dutiable items are being imported differently. The only restriction is the 70 kg per bag has to be there. That is the yardstick has been mentioned over here. So the other issue which the express industry is facing is the customs charges on cost recovery basis, which has been taken up by EICI. It is their body, that the Express Industry Council India. They have been chasing this issue, the customs authorities, that since the customs are there to do their sovereign duty of collection of duty, the exchequers, charges, why the levy of cost recovery is to be charged from the custodians over here, who are already well established right from more than 10 to 20 years. So that is because that charges definitely, when the Assistant Commissioner Custom will be there will be a Superintendent of Custom, there will be inspectors. There is a huge amount of the charges have to be borne by them, and that goes to the right up, down line to the customers and customers. So the cost is coming, the expenses which is being borne by the end users, definitely they are going to, it is unbearable for them, and that definitely is to be addressed by the government, that this request has to be seen in a proper perspective. Thank you.
Mr. Trikha, on the same issue, would you like to throw some light based on your experience?
This was mainly about the e-commerce?
E-commerce and the security and the other related concerns with respect to courier-based cargo.
E-commerce, as we all know, is a booming subject. A few years back we got a word called logistics, and now the second word coming in e-commerce. I being more from the cargo trade, may not be able to put so much of a light on that. But yes, this is the area where we also been focusing, keeping in view the potential it has and the way the market has been booming. There is an opportunity for all of us. There are certain issues at customs on import of the cargo by courier mode, and there are issues which been brought up to us by various shippers and importers and the suppliers overseas, wherein the worldwide it's allowed that a person can carry a sample when there's a AOG kind of a shipment, or there's a factory which is down because of one particular part. There could be a possibility of a courier, onboard courier flying into and carrying that part, and that is also allowed by many countries. Japan is very famous on this, and they being the country which is works on almost 0% inventory, would like to see that happening in India as well. But our customs has not opened up to that. I think there's a need to look at that aspect, that should also be allowed. And the appraising level at customs needs to have certain teeth to decide whether, especially on valuation, and they should not refer each and every shipment to the cargo, which defeats the basic purpose of the courier which is coming in an international mode on e-commerce as well. or in a cargo mode as well. I agree with Kumar Saab that documentation is one more bit which bothers us a lot. Looking at even the security declarations, I'm looking at, we've been handling more than 30 to 50 airlines, and all of them have a different set of format. And before coming to this place, when I tried to discuss this with my office, that how do we deal with the security declarations on our export cargo as well, they said, they brought me 4 big files. I said, what is this? He says, sir, we have 29 carriers which are asking for a security declaration. All formats are different. Some are from 1 page to 4 pages. Some are asking one should have experience of 30 days of working with the shipper, and some are asking 180 days. So there is no SOP even among the international carriers, leave apart our own carriers. Through this forum, we would like to convey that should also be looked into this, that this is one area which definitely creates issues. And once we talk about e-commerce, that means more speed. And if we have to deal with this kind of documentation and other issues, I think we are way behind.
So what you're basically saying, customs who's not here and DGCA who's not here are to do their jobs. Okay, I move on to Dr. Parmar. She is the economic advisor in the Ministry of Civil Aviation. I'd like to know from her, what is the plan of the ministry to develop air cargo hubs, and in the context of skill development for the aviation sector, how soon is this university going to come up and what kind of skills would be imparted there?
Right. Just before I go to the cargo hubs, about this issue of having different declarations and different formats for security clearances, I would just like to say that within aviation, there's a Bureau of Civil Aviation Security. Now they have come out with standard formats for, say, dangerous goods, perishables, etc. These are statutory orders. However, different airlines are adopting different formats, and that is something which we cannot really touch. If, for example, Lufthansa has got different requirements, they will only take cargo which meets their security clearances. So for the sake of uniformity and standardization, maybe we'd have to look at getting the help of, say, IATA to standardize these things, because this is something which is across all airlines, all international airlines. So this I just wanted to add here. Coming to the point on air cargo hubs, well, as many of you would have seen, the ministry has come out with a civil aviation policy, which is still in the draft phase, since we are consulting stakeholders on this. But in that, we have very clearly said that we are interested in developing in the country 6 major international cargo hubs, and these would be at the metro airports. The major airports, of course, being Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai and Calcutta. And very recently, MOCA has thought of hiring consultants to develop the DPRs for 2 airports, namely Delhi and Chennai. Now these regional cargo hubs, these are basically seen as to be international transshipment hubs. What we are looking at is, India has a long way to go as far as transshipment is concerned. Whereas in Singapore, Dubai, Incheon, Hong Kong, the transshipment volumes are something like 50% of total cargo movement. In India, it is hardly 2%. And there is a tremendous potential for this. So for these metro gateway airports, we're looking at developing them as transshipment cargo hubs. The other thing we need to develop, and we are looking at it simultaneously, is to develop our own regional cargo hubs within the country. For that, one of the most important things that is required is multimodal connectivity. Now, which connects the airports with railroad connectivity, with port connectivity. Now we have a dedicated freight corridor. I mean, it is developing, and we have the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. So we expect that the connectivities afforded by such corridors are going to help in the creation of, and these will be actually natural creations. I mean, because much of the cargo, if you look at it, if it is moving from south, it goes towards the western trajectory and to the north and then moves to the east. So you have all those airports that can be linked and which are already linked more or less on the national highways. Because most of the cargo, that is about 40% of the cargo moves on the national highways if it goes by road transportation. So we need to look at the connectivity, the multimodal connectivity that could be afforded in terms of developing regional cargo hubs along these freight corridors and along the natural development of manufacturing. Like what we are expecting in India is manufacturing to really take off, and if that happens, then we know that there will be many manufacturing hubs all over, which will have to be connected by rail, road and port. One of the best kind of hubs that I can speak of is the Dubai air cargo hub, which is connected, the airport is connected to the seaport and also by rail. So, I mean, the kind of volumes that are generated by such hubbing is enormous, and so that is one. Multimodal connectivity is one issue. The other thing is the kind of other infrastructure that you require at the airports itself, both landside and airside. What is the kind of infrastructure that you require? Firstly, it is an appropriate number of freighter bays. Like in Delhi, you have, I believe, nine freighter bays, whereas in Singapore there is something like 36. Now, of course, we keep comparing ourselves to the best, but that is where what we have to do, because that is what we are looking at. We are looking at a target of reaching something like 18 million tons by 2030. So, if we are, as Delhi has already developed a lot of capacity, we are expecting to, even if we have to make that kind of 18 million tons, you will have to have enough capacity for your freighter aircraft. You'll have to have dedicated airlines, even freighter airlines with wide body capacities. Right now, most of the cargo goes as belly cargo. That's not sufficient. It's not enough to carry the kind of load that we are envisaging in future. So we'll have to look at dedicated aircraft airlines who are going to come into this. They could be Indian freighters, they could be foreign freighters, but we need to look at that. We also need to look at the off-site facilities, that is land-side facilities for enough truck docking bays. Much of the congestion we hear about is caused by congestion due to the trucks lining up. And why does that happen? Because very often the parking of the trucks is just outside, and therefore there is a need for having these parking bays for trucks, etc., outside the airport area. And that goes for other facilitation for say cargo agents and the other stakeholders. They need to have processing facilities which could be near the airport, like an AFS. It is required because that decongests the airport. It helps them to bring in bonded material into the airport. Then within the airport, what are the kind of infrastructure that is required? We mentioned, perishables, like Mr. Dadu already mentioned, the need for cold storages within the airport. Enough cold storage for perishables like horticulture and floriculture, for example. Enough space for pharma, which is one of the greatest revenue earners. Those kind of facilities for dangerous goods, enough warehousing space, etc. So infrastructure is all of this. So to develop a good cargo hub, the airport has to be fully, loaded in terms of being able to facilitate cargo movement. Apart from this, of course, the much talked about issues are, of course, high dwell time as we currently know it. High dwell time, especially on the import, could be anywhere from 36 to 100 hours. This is something way off international benchmarks. We really have to see how this can be brought down, and many of these things are because, stakeholders keep blaming each other. I think that is not a solution. We must not look at who can improve upon what, but yes, we could lay down certain service level agreements which everybody has to agree to. The other thing is to bring down dwell time, we really have to look at the EDI infrastructure. There is no escaping from the fact that we have to move to digital mode, and there has to be paperless transactions. We have already started it in a number of airports. I've seen personally in Mumbai and Bangalore and Delhi as well, how this can work on a cargo community system where all the transactions are online, and in real time you can actually, see where your shipment is going, how it is moving. So these things are very transparent, they are much quicker, people don't have to keep on moving around the airport to get their papers and get the clearances, etc. However, we are still at a very initial stage, and I would say that basically what I target is not just, go paperless this way. You have to have all clearances online. You have to have the major authorities such as drug controllers, plant quarantine, animal quarantine, etc., all on the system to give approvals. And I think Customs has done is trying its best. They agree that this is possible, and I am glad to say that they have appointed a commissioner single window for this very purpose, and this is supposed to go online from 1st April. Of course, it will be at a very initial phase, but why I am saying this to you is, this is the way we have to go. In order to make our hubs, international and meeting all the international benchmarks of dwell time and quick turnaround, we will have to go this way. We will have to go the electronic way, we will have to go the paperless way, we will have to have a single window clearance. Whether it takes time, it could take 1 to 2 years, but finally this is the way to go. So, in summary, what one does visualize for developing cargo hubs, both domestic and transshipment cargo hubs, the way to go is to cut down on dwell time through a single window system, and by improving upon intermodal connectivity, multimodal connectivities, etc., and also making sure that we have some dedicated airlines, our own maybe national airlines, national freighters, who will take up this onerous job of developing international transshipment hubs as well. So,
thank you for that long disposition. That was very enlightening, I'm sure. I move on to Mr. Panikkar again. I mentioned about this problem of air cargo clearance during the weekends. Is it really a big issue in Delhi? And in that context, I also want to know the international cargo of joint venture airports. The projected target is 1.5 million tons for 2018-19. I know a large part of it has already been done, but if you can throw some light on Delhi, Mumbai and the other joint venture airports with respect to projected targets being met by 2018-19.
Thank you, Mr. Dadu. About the clearance of goods on weekends, there are issues. What actually happens is, for the although 24/7 is actually accepted norm, or has been declared by the government in certain airports, what we see is that on the export front it still happens. However, on the import side, currently import goods which are under RMS is only allowed on the weekends. So that actually tends to create some problem. Again, the RMS, originally RMS is to have up to 80% of the products were actually the shippers were clear. However, with the passage of time, even if supposing there is some error by a particular party and they actually might fall off the ACP list, then that list has actually now come down to about 40%. So RMS is no longer the way in which the people are clearing the codes. So that actually resulted in the slowing down of the clearance. However, to make 24/7 effective, maybe customs needs to also clear import goods which are not under RMS on the weekends, because they already have the capability and the capacity, because now they have deployed people. Earlier they used to take people from shifts and do this thing. Now there are people. Having said that, customs actually has done a lot of things for 24/7 to become successful. So also the airline and the airport. However, the volume of business perhaps is still not to that level that the demand is not coming. So supply is there, and to the extent supply is there, it's being met. So the demand is there, supply is meeting it. So earlier, maybe by 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, they would shut down the system and say, okay, now you don't receive any more cargo coming in. Now cargo is received sometimes till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, even if it gets late at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it gets cleared. But it is not coming into the night clearance or the 24/7 because there is adequate capacity at this juncture. The other element for 24/7 not being that successful is the fact that almost all the freight forwarders or the CHAs, they are all, I mean, perhaps especially the ones who are actually the Indian ones, they are actually operating on a very narrow margin, wafer thin margins, and for them to deploy a second shift, if there is not adequate amount of cargo, it actually doesn't yield that kind of a results. However, as the time passes and the cargo grows, it's bound to happen that the demand, as the demand starts coming in, the supply automatically will take load of these. So this is what's the scenario it's going to happen. In certain airports where the capacity constraints are going to hit earlier than later, you will see this becoming more effective. In Delhi, we have on particular days seen up to 80 tons being cleared in the night, which is almost 15% of the cargo. But of late, again, it's now just around 30 tons or 40 tons, which is again back to the 6 to 7% levels, which is not a very encouraging figure for all the kind of people who are kept there. See, the second question was more to do with the,
The international freight targets of 1.5 million tons for the
So the international freight targets, right now in Delhi, Delhi this year, in fact, we have actually almost touching 700,000 tons of cargo, of which 300,000 tons is roughly domestic and 400,000 tons is going to be international cargo. And as it stands today, Delhi will become the largest cargo airport. I mean, it's already the largest passenger airport. And for us, the international cargo has been growing at a steady pace of maybe around 8% average. But domestic has been the one which actually has been growing much faster. Domestic has actually grown at 15 to 16% and primarily driven by e-commerce. E-commerce is something which has actually led a significant increase in the growth. In fact, we have come to such a situation which is interesting, just as Dr. Parmar was telling, where there is no capacity available for the outgoing cargo. There was a particular month where actually cargo was coming into the airport and it had to actually, domestic cargo generally doesn't wait, it just generally flies the same day. The airlines are refusing to accept it because there was not enough capacity on the flights. Having taken a cue from that, the only domestic carrier today is Blue Dart. And now we are looking at possibly certain freighters coming into domestic. Jet is going to introduce its freighter shortly. And also the Sovica group, they are also actually looking at introducing a freighter. So there are freighters who are going to come into the sector, and e-commerce, as you have mentioned, is actually going to be a big key driver. One element, of course, the e-commerce, which is actually perhaps going to be a slight amount of wet towel for the aviation industry, is that earlier the delivery had to happen in 24 hours, 48 hours. Now they have an extended delivery schedule where they are also delivering in a week's time, 10 days time. So people not necessarily have to wait, I mean, it's not necessarily air cargo. Another element, you were talking about the AFSs and the possibly the other airports which are actually far flung. How do actually they become, possibly, they can become part of this e-commerce revolution. We have been focusing purely on air connectivity from place to place, but what happens in Europe is air connectivity happens on the road. It's not that the air connectivity means that it necessarily has to fly. Just to shift a bit from the normal perspective, if you take a look of a passenger who wants to say fly to New York from Patna, once he decides he's flying to Patna, he will prefer to take the flight from Patna airport, come to either Delhi or Bombay or maybe even to Dubai, and from there fly to New York. For him, because when he's flying this thing, he doesn't want to compromise on any of the quality of service, and the airfares are reasonable. Whatever is the best airfare and whichever is the best route, he will take. But supposing if a shipper is sending his consignment from Patna to New York, he will think of different options, so long as timeline is met and his cost is the minimum. So air cargo will take the route of least resistance. So air cargo may actually come on road all the way to Delhi, fly to Dubai, take a ship from Dubai and go to New York, if it is meeting its timeline, and it is actually cost efficient. So I think the air cargo is a totally different animal, unlike the people who actually travel, and therefore it's going to take the route to least resistance. Another aspect, very interesting aspect of air cargo is that unlike passenger actually, if you look at the 5 or 6 top airports in India, they do about 65 to 70% of the passenger traffic. But in terms of cargo, they do much more, almost 75 to 80. Why is that? Because of this factor that air cargo will reach an airport whichever is able to offer the best connectivity and the least rates. So invariably, air cargo finds its way into the airports. Unless these other airports are able to offer, if supposing, as I said, Guwahati is already an international airport, why are there not any international flights? It's very difficult for them to get an international flight, and if almost all our international airports, which are actually new airports, you will see they are only having connecting flights into other hub airports, which actually is anti-India hub. If you look at, they fly into either Dubai or to Abu Dhabi, or they fly into Singapore or Bangkok. These are all actually other hubs which actually attract away the Indian passengers. Similarly, if these airports develop also, they will only get one flight into maybe Dubai. So invariably the cargo will have to go into Dubai, and then it has to go somewhere else in the world. So actually it may not be actually much beneficial if you start looking at it actually developing an Indian air cargo hub. So that's my feeling. One element I just want to touch a bit more on is on the transfer cargo element which you did mention about. When we actually took over the Delhi airport, our transfer passenger numbers were around 2%. That was our transfer passenger numbers, because in India we didn't have an airport which could facilitate transfer passengers. And at that juncture we thought, okay, how much will Indian airport look at developing a hub, transfer passenger number? Our own estimate was maybe in 5 years, 6 years time that ratio will go to 10%. Today, Air India came in, they moved to Delhi, they moved their base from Bombay to Delhi, and today we have 22% transfer passengers. So we have been caught off guard. In the same area which we planned originally for a much smaller passenger, we have to now have 8 X-ray machines, and we managed to pass people through with that facility. So what has actually happened is the hub has actually, Delhi is becoming a hub for passengers, and what it means is in certain destinations which were not originally feasible has become feasible. In Birmingham, for example, we have 45 to 50% transfer passengers, and that route would not be feasible for Air India if the hub is not in Delhi. Similarly, into Sydney, Melbourne, almost 35 to 40% is transfer passengers. If you don't have that passenger, that route is not feasible. Similarly, for cargo, as we move from being right now, when we took over the airport, the transfer numbers was 1%, the transfer cargo, transit cargo. Today it's more up to 6%. 6% is still not something great. If you look at Dubai, if you look at Singapore, that figure is around 50% or 40% or 60%. So the potential is there. And if an Indian carrier actually decides to actually take this on, and we can actually offer products which can connect over India into different destinations. There are some problems with respect to customs still does want to give a clearance for the transit cargo or transfer cargo. We have been actually talking through the ministry, and we have also been pushing to them to develop the EDI module, which actually will make it easier for them also to clear. I'm glad to say that they have actually developed the EDI module, and they are testing the module in Delhi. So that also becomes another method in which slowly this transfer cargo and can actually look at. This actually also will add a significant amount to the bottom line of the airline, because cargo income in India is around 12 to 15% of the airline, and if you are able to increase it further, more freighters and more of these things can happen, and this will benefit the industry. Thank you.
Mr. Trikha, let me move on to you. Reduction of the free period for storage of imported goods from 72 hours to 48 hours is a long requirement of the trade and industry. What do you have to say about that? And is it feasible to do it?
I don't know whether it's a requirement of the industry or not, but I think CTOs and the ministry is pushing for it. But what we need to look at it is the in its entirety, especially when we are talking about import of goods. The manifestation part, which is very, very important, and unless it is manifested and ready for delivery, the flights being taken from 2 hours and on certain days of the year up to 24 hours, depending upon the capacity of the carrier, depending upon the handling capacity of the operators here, or if it is a large freighter and equipment is not available or custom officer is not available. So there are 3 agencies who would generally check this out: airlines, CTO and customs. Am I right? So bringing all these on one platform earlier used to be a big issue. It used to consume 2 to 3 hours even to put them together. And then the handling issues. So the concern of the industry was that you can reduce the dwell time for demurrage, but it should be subject to the readiness of the cargo for delivery. It should not from the time when it lands. From landing and to bring it into the warehouse. That portion is a major concern, and if that is addressed upon, I think industry is going to take it as a welcome. But if that is not being done and they are pushed to accept what CTO or please don't mind and the government is asking for, it could be an issue which may hurt the importers as a whole.
So
that's my way of
can I just have a, I mean, actually this is a very emotive topic, and whenever this topic comes up, Dr. Parmar will, she is actually witness to this. The airport and the cargo terminal operators have a perspective, and the freight forwarders and the CHAs and all, they have another perspective. What we have been saying is that actually the 72 hours is a free period which has been given for the clearance of import cargo. What we have seen is a significant chunk, almost 60 to percent of the cargo, the documents are also not filed within that free period. So there are certain instances when actually some of the people, not necessarily, there are people who are actually coming in on time. And so 80% of the cargo doesn't require any clearance other than customs clearance. Even in these cases, we have seen sometimes the documents are delayed. However, I agree with what Mr. Durga is saying. There are cases where the clearance of the cargo is actually, the breakup and the ready for delivery is not happening on time. So I think the ministry is working on something of a benchmarking kind of a system where they are going to put down yardsticks for, following. And it can be done. And based on what I think they are also requesting, is it possible that from the time of delivery, can we work out these are things which ministry, if they look at perhaps, maybe the 72 hours can be reduced, considering putting for each stakeholder a certain amount of time limit. It can be worked out.
I have a rider on this also.
Dwell time actually what we have seen, dwell time what we have seen is that whenever the free period is reduced, the dwell period has come down. Invariably, I'm told in when 1982s, 80s and all, the free period was something like 15 days, and the dwell time was 16 or 17 days. So now it's come down to 72 hours, so the dwell time is about 100 hours. So it's just +1, so that's the literal front. So you have to look at how do you actually, but yeah, there are always pros and cons.
Small observation on this if you allow. I still feel that this dwell time should be counted from the time when the shipment is ready for delivery.
That point is noted.
Yes. And second issue of taking the subject away that 30 to 40% importers are not even filing the papers. So if they are not filing the papers, perhaps it's their funeral. But that should not be the yardstick to decide that it should be done like this. We also try to make some survey on this, and out of these 30 to 40% who are not filing in 3 days, most of them are perhaps the government bodies. And most of them are perhaps outside Delhi, where the shipments are addressed to the bank and they have to go to the bank, collect the delivery order, and then come and file it, and they lose 3 days. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bama, you are welcome to comment on this if you like, but the more fundamental question I wanted to ask you is, these 37 non-operational airports, what is your thinking about by when these airports will become operational? Will they become operational at all? And what is the criteria that is being used to ensure that they come to a deadline?
Actually, we have a list of 32 non-operational airports.
Okay.
Maybe that might be an earlier list. Right now it's down to 32. But they have been non-operational for quite some time. And recently we have circulated this list to Airports Authority, to consider whether anybody could use those airports for the purpose of cargo, warehousing, or the e-commerce companies could use them, because I believe that e-commerce companies, much of their revenues are now coming from tier 2 and tier 3 towns in the country. So perhaps there's a possibility of their utilizing, say, Warangal or Rewa or Satna, or some of the Pasighat in the northeast, because the northeast has suddenly become very active in terms of online buying, and a lot of the business is going that side. So we've offered that list to Airports Authority to circulate it, and in fact 1 or 2 people are showing interest in it. Now there's only one issue here, is that air cargo can only take off if there are airlines going to those airports. Right now no airlines is going there, and even if any airline would go or any aircraft would go, they would be very small aircraft, they are less than 20-seater or even less, or say helicopters. Now they can't carry cargo. The kind of cargo they will be able to carry is very little. So it's very difficult to say right now, because we just started on this process, whether these airports can become operational at all. But what I am saying is, maybe it could be used as warehousing space, and that could be connected with the nearest airport through bonded trucking, etc. So again, like Mr. Panikkar has said, everything depends on the volumes, because if you don't have the volumes, nobody is going to go in for any airport. The only sector which is showing some boom is actually e-commerce. So we are hoping that there would be some kind of interest shown by them.
Okay, sorry, I forget. Mr. Kanwar.
Yes, sir.
On the northeast, there is a lot of discussion. I believe some specific focus is being given on the northeast. Looking at the airport availability in the northeast, 12 of them are functional. Guwahati is an international airport without flights. How do you foresee the future of the northeast and air cargo and air passengers in this area?
Northeast is a very big, the 7 sisters are, the states are there, I think, to be very frank, if you see the whole country, Northeast is totally neglected. If you see the roads of Northeast, the developments, taking place in the infrastructure facilities, I don't think how the government is not very keen to visit those places and develop, the issue of, those terrorist, segments are there, components are there, but still, I'm talking about the developments which is taking place. It is totally different area. So definitely, the government has to make some efforts of connectivity, road, and road, rail, and air and all. And air, definitely, the national carriers, especially Air India, Jet, and other airlines, they have a target they have to fly over there. They have to have some of the few minimum flights operating that area. So definitely, there is a scope of their handicrafts which is coming up, which they develop over there. That needs to be promoted over here with good schemes and all. And some products like tea gardens are there, and cardamoms are there. Their productions are there which they can produce basically. But the only thing is, the security aspect. The security, safety aspect is also there. The government has to look into them. And with good promotions, those airports can be developed. And they can feed basically the bigger airport like Calcutta. The nearest airport, the international airport is Calcutta. And definitely Calcutta is going to, if you, airport authority is going to develop that area, including Northeast, Calcutta will get the benefit of that because being a national, international airport. So there is a scope definitely for the passenger also. Even if you compare our place, from where I belong, Uttaranchal situation is same. If you see, compare with the road infrastructure, there is only one mode of transportation there. If one road is blocked, you are stuck up over there. There is no, helicopter services. There are no small flights services. Though it is a tourist place, Badri Kedars are there. But the investment towards the transportation, connectivity is, really very serious over there. So I compare the same situation, still, the fruits, you can see the flowers, the scope is there. The commerce can grow, lots of industry people are growing flowers in Nainital side, and even like Himachal has developed, Similarly, the scope is there, but the only thing, we need to have a good package to that area for developing and giving the aid to promote them. And I hope definitely there is a scope.
I think we've touched on a lot of air cargo issues. There are about 10 minutes left. I thought we could open it for discussion with the audience. If you have any pressing questions, I'm sure the panelists will take them. Yeah. Neetu, can we give them a mic? There's a question there.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, all the panel members. It was a very fruitful discussion and in very detail. My first question is to Madam. Recently, Ministry of Civil Aviation is coming out with aviation policy.
Can you speak in the mic, please?
Yeah. In which there is a mention of multimodal cargo hubs, development of multimodal cargo hubs, and there are 6 names there: Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, so and so. In 2001, Government of Maharashtra, with the approval of Government of India, Ministry of Civil Aviation, decided to develop Nagpur as a multimodal passenger and cargo hub airport. There are railway lines going on all the 4 directions of India, highways going on all the 4 directions of India. Nagpur is the center point of India, and there is a huge special economic zone. Ministry of Commerce has approved it. It has become operational, and there is a space for cargo processing. Unlike other cities, metro cities, when we talk about roads and rail connectivity, it is in other cities, it is much away from the airport. In Nagpur, it is abutting, crossing the airport boundary.
So what is your question?
My question is, why such place, a center place like Nagpur, has not been considered by Ministry of Civil Aviation as a multimodal cargo hub airport?
Okay.
This is my question.
I would not exclude Nagpur because we are not specifically excluding those cargo terminals and facilities that have already been set up because they meet the market demand. We have specifically talked about the metro gateway airports, to facilitate exports and imports and transshipment cargo. So in the policy we have specifically mentioned these 6 metros, but it doesn't really exclude say a Nagpur or an Ahmedabad or Jaipur. It's like I said during my discussion that we are going to look at developing regional cargo hubs, and those hubs which are already developed on a multimodal basis should pick up their business. If Nagpur has not been able to generate business and somebody else has, for example, I think Hyderabad has taken the business of Nagpur, then these are all market dynamics.
Okay, any other question? No. In that case, we will call it a day. Thank you very much for attending this, and I pass it on to.
Thank you so very much, sir. And may I request you to please present with each one of our panelists with a token of our appreciation, because they all made this panel discussion so very enlightening. So I'd like to request Sri Radu to please present each one of our panelists. Thank you so very much, Dr. Parmar. Pleasure indeed. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presence. May I request all of you to please put your hands together. And may I also request Mr. Vivek Gaur, MD and CEO Airworks India Engineering, to please join us on stage and thank Shri Dadu for paneling the chair. Thank you so very much once again. So may I request you to please join us for a group picture. I think the low on energy is seeing the way India is playing at the moment, but nevertheless, I'm sure if you get high on energy, we'll see the game changing. So let's request all of you to put your hands together for our entire panel here. Thank you all. Thank you.